Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this event today. I am very grateful to all of you for joining us. Thank you so much for finding your time to get to know more about research, about engagement, research as an instrument of engagement. Thank you for joining us despite all the circumstances, despite the missile attacks. I am really grateful to you for being here. Thank you so much for being ready to talk about the process of recovery and reconstruction. And I hope that we'll be able to share your experience with us and ask important questions. So it was a message for our international partners. If they want to listen to interpretation in English, we don't have English speakers today, so we won't need interpretation into Ukrainian, and I will tell you later why. I suggest that we start by getting to know each other, and I suggest that we introduce each other in the chat. Please write down your name, which institution, which hromada you represent, and we'll be able to get to know more about each other. My name is Maria Hryshchenko. Today I will be moderating this event. I'm a guest expert within this project in the area of community engagement. Today we will discuss the topic of research as a tool of community engagement, and we'll discuss the project of SETOS, which is carried out thanks to support of ULEAD with Europe. This is a big educational project which is aimed at raising the issue of engagement of different hromadas all over Ukraine. Today, this is our third meeting. Our previous meetings were dedicated to the information communication policy, urban development and recovery policy. And today we will discuss studies or research as a tool of engagement. In order to get to know more about the project and about the steps to take, I would like to give it over to Ivan Vorvitsky, Director of Analytical Center, SETOS. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to see all of you here today, despite all the difficulties. If anything happens, if you have electricity cut out, you'll be able to watch this recording later because we are recording this event, and we are really grateful to you. We understand how difficult it is to find time for joining such event. That is why we are really grateful to all of you. I'm the director of SETOS Analytical Center. Since 2010, we have been into research and analysis in different areas of social development, including education, social policy, community development, local development, and many others. So today we are happy to discuss the processes of recovery of communities because we understand that these processes have already started and they will last for a period of time in our country. We understand that there are a lot of opportunities to fund these processes. There are donors who are ready to work with Ukrainian communities to facilitate their development and recovery. We understand that the capacity of the communities and of all of us is of utmost importance because we need to take part in recovery, and all of this depends on high quality planning. It depends on how different stakeholders, different groups, different interest groups will be engaged in this process inside the community. That is why, thanks to you Lead with Europe program, we are really grateful to this program. Our aim is to help Ukrainian hromadas better engage local inhabitants and different stakeholders in the processes of planning of recovery. This is the first stage of this project. That is why we conduct these workshops twice per month. We have 3 more workshops which take place every next Thursday. After these preliminary stage of the project, we'll have further stages. The most important stage, which will be related to helping the hromadas, support of hromadas. Soon we'll announce our search for hromadas partners, and for some period of time we'll select requests, and after that we'll select 10 hromadas. Within the next year, we'll work with them in order to help meet their needs and to help them plan the process of further development, recovery, reconstruction, in the most participatory way, because we need to take into account the interests, the requests of different groups of inhabitants. Also, we are very happy to have this separate event, which is related to research, as a way to get to know the needs and wishes of the inhabitants of communities when planning their cities, villages, and hromadas. For us, it looks very interesting and very important. We, as Analytical Center status, we are conducting research, including for communities and in cooperation with communities. And that is why we are also happy to share this experience to meet your needs. If you have any, this is one of the objectives behind this project. I'm very happy that we have this conversation today, that we are ready to bring more attention to different aspects, to discuss how different research methodologies related to engagement processes can be started. We can study these processes. We can use research as a way to engage people. We can use research as a stage when we assess the efficiency of engagement, and we also can conduct research engaging people that we study. So there are different kinds of cooperation. Relations between research and engagement are also different. We are interested in this, and we are really happy that we have the opportunity to discuss that in more detail. I will be also happy to share in the chat a link to 2 articles which are related to research that might be of interest to you. The first one is our textbook that sums up our experience. We have prepared it several years ago. And the second, this is a text which we have prepared more than 5 years ago together with our colleagues from Latvia. They have shared their experience on how we can conduct research with the engagement of different people. In the end, if you have any questions or if you'd like to discuss that, we will have a Q&A session. That's it from me for now. I will give it over to my colleague, to Maria, and I wish you a productive discussion today. Enjoy your day. I am happy to see all of you. Thank you so much, Ivan. Thank you so much for introducing the topics to us. Thank you so much for joining us here. And I see that there are a lot of introductions in the chat. There are a lot of representatives of different hromadas. There are representatives of the civil society. And there are also experienced researchers. It seems to me that our mix of people is very interesting. So we have the opportunity to exchange our experiences. So how we will work today? Today we'll present experience of 3 institutions, 3 different hromadas, which will reflect different ways of studies as means of research, as means of engagement. Today, we will discuss the role of research as means for engagement. As a toolkit, we will discuss many things related to the system of building such system of interaction through research. We will also raise some ethical questions. For example, how we can use research as an element of engagement, and when it makes sense, when it doesn't. And we will also discuss how we can conduct research engaging many users of our results of our project that we implement. So today we will talk to Maxim Terletsky, acting director of Institute of the City of Lviv. He will tell us about the system approach to planning research in the communities. We will also have with us Kirilo Polivanov, representative of a civil society organization from Berdyansk. He will tell us about how research helps engage internally displaced people, engages them in the process of planning the future, and we will also raise many ethical issues related to this. And we'll also discuss how the role of IDPs in shaping up the community. We also have Marina. She will tell us more about engaging volunteers and activists to the processes of conducting research, analysis of results. She will tell us how it influences the process of policy making. Also, we should have had with us Kim Goodlach, a representative of civil society initiative from Berlin, who had to tell us about the participatory research in Germany, but unfortunately, because of personal reasons, she couldn't join us. And unfortunately, we didn't have other representatives of her team who could replace her. On the other hand, we can use this time to discuss some pressing issues, and we can share our experience. We can listen to your questions. We can listen to your experiences that are related to the tools of research. Research as the opportunity to engage hromadas and to the process of decision making. So let me suggest that we proceed to the presentations. First, we will have presentations from our speakers. It will last for up to 15 minutes, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask a personal question to the speaker. And in the end, we will have a Q&A session. We'll be able to discuss these topics. You'll be able to ask your questions in the chat or ask them live after the end of the presentation. So I would like to give it over to Maxim Terletsky. Maxim will tell us more about his experience. He will tell us about the system of monitoring and research of the needs of inhabitants of the city of Lviv. How does it influences the process of engagement in Lviv, and what are the key tools that you use? I would also like you to share your recipes of success on how to build such a systemic approach in the community and what you need to have to do that. Maxim, over to you. Thank you so much, Maria. I will share my screen with the presentation so you can see it while I talk. Yes, we can see a screen, but we don't see the presentation. Can you see it? Yes, everything is good. Good afternoon, everyone. The topic that I will present today, this is research as a means of engagement. The city of Lviv, so City Institute in Lviv, this is the Center of Strategic Planning and Development. We work as a utility, as a municipal institution, and it is funded by the Lviv City Council. But we also actively cooperate with different organizations, including those that provide grants, helping conduct research. As for the organization itself, our key mission, why we have been created in the first place, our mission is to unite efforts of different departments of the Lviv City Council, of the businesses that operate in Lviv, civil society organizations that work in Lviv, academic institutions, through cooperation with universities and other academic institutions. And also we wanted to unite our forces with the active and less active city residents so they can contribute to development of the city. There are key terms that I would like to tell about when we're talking about engagement and united efforts. It is about engagement because there are different ways that we try to use to engage people to reach this effect, because we want to do something together when we are talking about choosing development of the city. There are objectives that have been defined. There are indicators using which we monitor the efficiency of developing these initiatives. As for the City Institute, one of the tasks that we implement, this is development of the strategy and implementation of the strategy. But mostly this is about monitoring of implementation of different strategies. Our next task is to engage additional funds that might strengthen some strategic areas of development. And our third objective is to use communication not only in Lviv, in the Lviv community, but also outside of the city, and also communicating with Ukrainians and other citizen countries. I really like this picture. This is from the project Connection Community. I don't remember the exact title of this project, but I really like this image. So in theory, if you take a look at what we do, engagement, this participation, and increasing the influence from informant to providing people the opportunity to take part in decision-making process. This is how we see this process of engagement. The City Institute often specializes on conducting sociological opinion polls, research. I would say that this is the second level of engagement, consulting, because thanks to research, we have the opportunity to get feedback from our city residents, from those groups that we're interested in. After getting this information from the people, we have the opportunity to use it in order to develop city policies or to work on concrete solutions, projects, and do any other kind of work that is necessary for the city to grow and develop.
Today, I would like to tell about four main tasks, I would say, or processes that we were researching in Lviv to ensure their development. Just to give you a little bit of context, the activity of such institutions is the Institute of the City in Lviv, how it happens. Usually there are a lot of projects, activities, ideas, and one project supports another project, but it's always a kind of venture investment. And if we will have a look at all the ideas that were ever launched, only about 10% would be implemented, and this will contribute to the city development. And 90% of the ideas will remain on paper or waiting for their time. So what actually worked in Lviv city? The project Hromada in Action, or Community in Action. It's the project which was implemented in 2015, 2017. Those project was aimed to activate, to give the incentives for the creations of the communities, so that people would be responsible not for only for their house, flat or building, but for the neighborhood. So we were doing the research of well-being, of quality of life. We held a complex poll in 2015, 17, and 19. The task of this research was to analyze the needs, to understand what kind of problems are there by the means of analysis, for example, of how the transport infrastructure of the city is able to ensure the comfort for the citizens, or if the security system of the city is efficient, like what happens with the services in the city, if this infrastructure is satisfying for its citizens. And the results of this research survey would give us the information as if this year we would be able to drop some indices, and then we would submit this information to organizations that are decision makers, like city councils, military administration, etc. So we were informing them during the meetings and discussions to discuss the policies in order to improve the situation or address the problem. We will continue this survey up to 2025 to see the statistics from 2025 to 2015 to 2025. And with the help of this survey, some decisions were made, and strategies were developed. And due to the systematic nature of this survey, although it's hard to say about it being really systematic, because first because of the COVID pandemic, and then because of the full-scale invasion, we didn't have chance to help the survey as it was planned, but we will for sure we will make it up till 2022. But it is possible to create the system of monitoring of strategic documents, monitoring of city council, Lviv city council activity. Other subject of the research is mobility. It's a very broad subject. A lot of efforts from different organizations and city council were made to ensure sustainable mobility in Lviv. There were 2 surveys in 2019 and 2021 during the winter time. And based on those surveys, we understood the needs of people based on how their mobility in the city look like. And we received a lot of indicators to develop the sustainable mobility plan for Lviv. It became the basis of the action plan, the cyclist concept for the city, electromobility plan, and additionally, we also held some research in the mobility, like, for example, this level of safety of the traffic near the schools, in order to influence the situation, to improve the situation and the safety and security on the road. by communicating results to the respective bodies. The survey is really necessary for sustainable city mobility. There is certain regularity of surveys in order to be able to analyze whether the plan is being implemented and whether it needs any corrections. Another area of work, and it's been developing very actively in Lviv since 2018. It's the activation of youth policy. After Lviv city has obtained the status, was granted the status of youth capital of Ukraine, there was a parliament children and youth in order to understand their needs and problems. It's a very broad definition. Of course, there were a lot of different questions. So these are the results of Lviv youth research. And there is a link you can follow to see more details. So based on this research, some youth centers were created. And Lviv has reached certain achievement. It was announced already that in 2025, Lviv will become the European youth capital. In 2019, there were a survey, and then in 19 and 21, the youth center together with UNFPA were held in the research. And this research also became a monitoring tool. The research has become the basis for the action plan, community friendly to children and youth. And I hope UNICEF program in Ukraine will support the implementation of this plan. And the possibility to take the decisions based on the data gives also the possibility in its turn to communicate more effectively with different bodies, authorities, institutions, donors who would be able to provide the resources for the development of the cities and different organizations in the cities. So the process that Institute of the City is working on right now, it's a lifeline learning. The process started in 2018. We saw there were some aspects missing in adult education. There was only one project. It started like that. Then we did a survey on the citizens to understand what are their educational needs, what formats they prefer, what subjects they would want to learn. The research was held at the basis of the libraries, and started from 2018, it was held annually. And in 2022, there was a lot of demand for informal education. Also because there were lots of internally displaced people who came to Lviv and they had need to obtain some new qualification. And we mostly the educational organizations and facilities were working in online format in 2022, but the plan for 2023 is a bit different. We're trying to provide more offline education and to work based on the basis of the libraries and other centers. We collect the information from the participants of the courses. There's more than 10,000 of different motivational letters, which gives us the information on how we should organize the lifelong education for adult people in Lviv. Our ambition is to become the UNESCO city, and we have this strategy that will allow us to reach those goals. All the researches that have been held will be the basis for action plan and monitoring of the activity, not only for the action of the city councils, but also for NGOs and other providers in the education services. other providers of the education services. And to summarize all that, I would like to say that the research, the surveys are very important. They provide engagement. They give us the understanding of the trends and tendencies in the city. Today, as I said, 10% of what was ever started is being supported with trends and tendencies, and there is a good chance that it will develop. A lot of projects fail, so when we make the surveys, it gives us better understanding and it gives us possibility to invest our resource better and to develop the projects that would be really prosperous. Any self-governing body need data to take decisions, to provide the evidence-based database policies and projects and action plans in order to avoid any chaos or spontaneity in decision making, to avoid any contradictions. So the surveys and the public opinion is a very important point here. And also monitoring of the process implementation, because sometimes the process has several strategies. So it's a monitoring of strategic documents that exist at the level of community statistics that city has or statistics that region has. Sometimes it's not informative enough. That's why through engagement of the people, through public opinion polls, consultations, etc., we can provide the higher quality of monitoring of both of our work and of other processes in the system. As to the systematic approach, I would also like to add, I don't think there is big systematic, I cannot say that the research, it's not very systematic, even at the level of Lviv City Council. Sometimes it's very difficult to convince people that they have to allocate the budget to help the research. So very often research is a tool. And we are very grateful to partners and organizations who give the funds to, or who give the money to make research in Lviv. It doesn't add in terms of systematic approach, but it helps us to show the quality work, and it helps us to communicate our results. And if we are able to communicate our results better, we are able to find more funds for our future work. So I will leave all the contacts in the chat. Also, you can follow the QR code. Thank you very much for your presentation, for sharing your experience. Now it's time for questions. Dear participants, if you have any questions to Maxim, you have two options. You can put your question in the chat, or you can raise your hand. Actually, I already see the first question in the chat, and also I also have a question as a moderator. If you don't mind, I will ask it, and then the questions from the audience. Maxim, my question is regarding your research. The most of the research that you demonstrated to us is a quantitative research. How do you organize your research? Do you do it by your own means? Is it online? Is it by phone? Do you collect the public opinion in the public places? Do you have any methodology, sociological? Do you apply some sociological tools if you do it by your own means? How it all happens? And do you cooperate with other institutions in order to help the researchers? And if you do, which institutions do you cooperate with? Thank you. Okay, so as to the method of research, usually we hire the organizations who help us to help the quantitative survey. So we very often we hire interviewers who are able to meet people, to run through the questionnaire. So it's some sociological agencies that are represented in Lviv. In most of the cases. So this is how it happens. Now I'm speaking about complex researches that need a lot of resources, and we don't have our own resource to do it on our own. Like when our team is not that big, we have one analyst and, for example, and so on. Sometimes we don't have resource to hire an agency to help the poll. In such a case, those could be the research of the smaller scale. How we do it? Either we still hire some additional people, interviewers, who will work for us directly, and we will process the results and prepare the report, or we cooperate with Lviv universities, and we propose kind of short-term internships for the students. We do not pay for it, but we still try to organize some kind of reward for the people who help us. So this is another way of how we can do it. So there are different ways actually, and even if you don't have money, it's still realistic to do it in your community, especially if it's not that big. As to how it happens face to face, by phone, online, well, because of the pandemic, we was using our database. We have emails, phones, etc. So we were trying all this means, but very often you still need a face-to-face offline conversation. For example, with elderly people, it's extremely difficult to make some online questionnaire, etc. They not always they have gadgets, and not always they're able to fill in the online questionnaire. As to the researchers, some researchers, for example, that Youth Center in Lviv does, it's completely online, and they have some information campaign, and they also engage young people to provide the selection for the quality research. So there is a combination of different methods. As to the survey on mobility, about the quality of city transport, so there were about 5,000 people who responded online. They were quite active. But with covering the elderly people, this segment of target audience, it's much more difficult. So with them, we still have to go with face-to-face approach. We also did focus groups. We didn't do them lately, but in the previous years, also we held focus groups. Especially after quality of life survey, we did some focus groups on city development, on environmental situation, etc. So it was qualitative research in the focus group. they were people from different Lviv organizations working in Lviv. Thank you very much. There is a question from Serhi. I see your hand raised, please. Yes, thank you very much, Maxim, for this wonderful presentation.
I work at IOM and I'm really interested in this topic. We are about to start a project which is aimed at supporting local communities in 10 regions of Ukraine, including in Lviv region. We want to improve the community capacity to withstand under the conditions of all the difficulties. We want to engage them to communication with different communities, different hromadas. And right now we are at the preliminary stage. You said that there are many initiatives that are starting. 90% of they do not continue. So we are trying to engage local communities for the decision-making process. And maybe you will say, tell us more about the interest of the local population after the initiatives haven't been supported. Can you please tell us whether they lost their interest in cooperation? Maybe you have information like this. Thank you. From the point of view of this, so those research that I have told you about, those types of research, we get feedback from the residents. So, and we report on concrete policies which are implemented in the city. If we want local inhabitants to take part in the process, to develop some kind of a solution, this is a higher level of engagement, seminars, workshops, different formats, urban cafe, and many others. So this is where we discuss different ideas, develop different ideas. It seems to me that the interest, for example, what I see here, local residents, they are interested in providing their feedback, but it might change with time. For example, it's a topic of mobility is very relevant. For me, it's difficult to say if we'll be able to organize an event in Lviv about mobility, which won't be interested to some people. They will come and they will suggest their ideas. Despite that, for example, 1 year ago, several years ago, they have already participated and their ideas were not taken into account. It is very important to give feedback on what will be taken into account and what won't be taken into account, and to explain why. If this communication has been carried out, it will help minimize this feeling, for example, that we were not asked, or other groups in social media, for example, might complain. So I cannot say how many people lose their interest. I cannot say that, of course, but in my opinion, participation of people gives us a lot of inspiration. Thank you so much, Maxim. Thank you so much, Sergey. I would like to add that this is very important. In any case, when we listen to needs of people, they do have expectations. They want their needs to be met. That is why this practice of responding to what was taken into account and what wasn't is very important. And it seems to me that answering this question, for many people all over Ukraine, this practice of feedback, when we say what was taken into account, what wasn't, based on the research, is we only start to introducing this practice. So something happens to the needs and we need to explain people everything that happens. It is important to provide feedback after the research has been made, to explain what was taken into account, what wasn't. I'm sure that the City Institute wants to do that. I give it over to Dmytro. He will ask his question. And if you have questions to Maxim, please write them in the chat. Dmytro, over to you. You raised your hand. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very interesting. Recently, we have created a city council in this, and I'm one of the members of this youth council. One of the projects that I would like to present is to understand the needs of the youth, to understand the percentage of young activists that would like to take part of the activities. We understand that one of the tools is opinion poll survey, but we do not have enough resource to employ an analytical company, and we'll do that ourselves. But I would like to ask you for your expert opinion. What kind of strategy we can select to do that? How we can implement all of this to understand what is happening? You can use the index of youth welfare if you want to cooperate with the young people, and I think they will be able to support you if you want to conduct this research. This is a team of people who know a lot about the needs of the youth. They have the procedure, which consists of 9 steps that you have to do in order to conduct a research. That is why I won't retell you their strategy. I would recommend it to get in touch with them. I can leave in the chat a link to their website. They are very open, and there is a resource, so there is a platform using which you can conduct this research. So that's what I suggest if you want to conduct this research. It seems to me that it would be very efficient. Thank you so much, Maxim. Please leave the message in the chat, but I also have 2 questions in the chat related to methodological aspects of your research and this feedback. Please also respond in the chat. Maxim, okay? Thank you so much. Thank you. I suggest that we proceed, and now we'll talk about the quality aspects of research and the processes of developing strategy and thinking about the future, as well as thinking about working with the community of IDPs. We'll proceed to listening to the experience of Berdyansk, and let me invite Kirill, please present your project. Please tell us more about your research, which is related to daily life in Berdychiv and of residents of Berdychiv. Over to you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Karina Polivana, civil society organization Chas Ye from Berdyansk. I will share my screen in a moment. So I hope you can see it. Today, I would like to tell you more about our project, We Are Berdyansk, as a case of engaging the community of the temporarily occupied city. Probably people from other countries are listening to us right now, from other regions of Ukraine as well. That is why I would like to tell you a little bit more about the city. Berdyansk is a cozy tourist town in Zaporizhzhia Oblast of Ukraine, in the south of Ukraine. It is located 90 kilometers from Mariupol. In general, Berdyansk has been developing around a seaport. It has been actively developing in the 19th century as a port city. with active international ties, international trade. However, right now the seaport is more of a symbol for the community. Within the past 10 years, this seaport didn't play an important role on the social and economic life in the city. What's important for our city is the tourist sector, because it was very important in the life of our city, especially in summer. There were a lot of tourists visiting the city, and our life changed a lot because of that. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, from the 27th of February 2022, the city has been under temporary Russian occupation. Speaking of the population, I must say that until the full-scale invasion, we had 115,000 inhabitants. Officially, almost 10,000 of these were IDPs from Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast, mostly from Donetsk Oblast. But we can say that even less than 10,000, every 10th inhabitant of Berdyansk was an IDP. With time, they have become active participants of the community. I shall also say that Berdyansk is largely a Russian-speaking city, and it's very difficult to hear Ukrainian in daily life, in daily communication. However, I wouldn't make assumptions based on this, like that Berdyansk was a Russian-oriented city, because it wasn't true. So since last February, the city has been temporarily occupied. The occupation was evolving gradually. First, the Russian forces has encircled the city, and then step by step, they captured different areas of our daily life. They occupied medical institutions, firefighters, different financial institutions, and as of now, absolutely every area of our life is controlled by this occupation, so-called administration. In order to leave the city to the government control area of Ukraine, or to go back to Ukraine, it is possible, it is necessary to cross the territory of Crimea or go through Mariupol or Rostov. So those people who have the critical need to get into the city or to get out of the city, they only have this opportunity to go through Russia or the occupied Crimea. So this is about the city. Well, organization, just this is a creative space, civil society hub that has been open in Berdyansk since 2015. We have been conducting regular events. We had about 10 or 15 meetings every week. These were leisure events, civil society initiatives, events for children, and so on and so forth. So different initiatives. In this sense, we have implemented grassroots initiatives for the community of the city. We have never depended on the local government or big state institutions. In this sense, we have always been independent. And we have always tried to respond to the needs of our community, to strengthen those initiative groups that we have seen. When we saw that there is an initiative, we wanted to unite people in order to implement those initiatives. After the start of the full-scale invasion, most participants of our group have been evacuated to other cities of Ukraine or to other countries abroad. When some of the first changes passed, we came to the conclusion that it is important to continue working with our audience, with the community of our city. So our audience, a large part of our audience, these are active people, most of them. They are openly pro-Ukrainian. And that is why for them it is difficult to stay in the occupied city. So most of them have left the city and moved to other regions of Ukraine or abroad. So we have started in October 2022, we have started the project Via Berdyansk in order to maintain those links between the residents that live all over Europe right now. As for our vision, when I am discussing the strategic concept behind this, on an individual level, in simple language, I must say that why people participate in this project, it is up to everyone. Each of us must find answers to why I shall go back to Berdyansk after Ukraine's victory. What will I do there? Can I be useful for the city, and how the city will change after the victory? This is a grant project. It is funded by the European Fund for Democracy. We are really grateful to them. We have made the conclusion that it is necessary to create a platform for systemic communication with our audience and with the residents of the community of the hromada. We have two areas: psychological support. We are conducting group psychological consultations and individual consultations. We also conduct different creative workshops. We also have writing courses, the writing documentary theater. For example, today we will have meeting of Ukrainian speaking club. We also plan to add English speaking club. All this meeting, from the point of view of the content, when, for example, a person wants to get creative skills, we must understand that it is necessary, that it might be used as a precondition to meet, depending on the topic of the meeting. We often have discussions after these meetings, because we need to understand how our life changes every day, what are the challenges that we confront every day, and we plan to meet, but it's very difficult to explain the importance of such strategic planning sessions. That is why we use such format of creative meetings and events as a platform to discuss all initiatives. I have also told you that we are focused on the future, on understanding and looking for the answers on how the city will change. Because after the victory, the city will be rebuilt. If it will be partly destroyed. And in this sense, it is very important to record, to document the image of the city before the war.
In order to understand what was important for the community, what is important for the community, what was that created the DNA of the city, the cultural code, something the community was uniting around. And there are research instruments, and to do that, that's why at the beginning of our project, at the launch of our project, we held a Sociological research. Ruslan Savchinsky, sociologist from Lviv, helped us, and we are very grateful to him for his professional help. And based on the time limitations, budget limitations, we decided to use in-depth interview as the methodology. The aim of the research is to study the basic image about the city of the citizens of Berdansk, what they can say about the cultural environment, and what is the identity of the city community. It was an online survey. There were 10 respondents, nine of them online. One girl was in Lviv. So we were able to make face-to-face interview. And one factor that could have adverse impact on the scientific component of the research was that all those respondents were no longer staying in Berdansk. On the other hand, it gave us some other piece of information because all these people, they were in the other cities and they had chance to compare their experience of life in Berdansk and in the city where they were in the moment when the research took place. It was in December 2022. I am speaking for 13 minutes already, as I see, so I will not give you a lot of details about the results. I just suggest you to download the report and read it. You would be one of the first people who would see it because yesterday we finished it. If someone has difficulties in scanning QR code right now, I will send a link in the chat right after I finish my presentation. And now I would like to answer your questions if you have them. And if should you have the questions later after our webinar, please feel free to write me in Telegram, Facebook, email. I will be happy to communicate, to tell more things, and to keep in touch for the future. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I see we have questions in the chat. Also, if someone wants to ask your question out loud, please raise your hand and go ahead. I see a question in the chat. Let me try to ask it in a more simple way, maybe. And actually, I also wanted to ask, for your project, you have chosen the approach based on the research before developing the project to support the Berdiansk community, to support the people who moved out of the city. Why you have decided that you need this research and how you took the decision on what kind of research it's going to be, how many people you have to contact, do you think that your selection was enough, etc. Thank you very much for your question. As to the scale of the research, the people who ever held any study know that you always would like it to be more scaleful. You always would like to do more, but no matter how much results we obtain, how many results we obtained, any researcher would always want more, would always want to go deeper and find out more. Interviewing is a qualitative format of research. It's difficult to do the quantitative research as well now. So the approach to quantitative research could be through qualitative research. So this qualitative research method, its interview was more relevant for us because we didn't want to jump right into the questionnaire. We thought it would be too soon. Why this research was important to us? The part of the outcomes that have been made, as it often happens, for a person who works regularly with the community and knows the target audience, it can be something evident, of course, but it was also important to make sure that a person who is not an insider would be able to record this using some methodology, scientific methodology, to use the results of this survey to be able to support any ideas or opinions, because it's important that we have respondents of different age groups, etc. Why it was important in the frameworks of the project? Because it was important to understand what our community looked like before the full-scale invasion. And based on these results, we plan to create art exhibition where the narratives of Berdiansk community will be represented, that they have pro-European, pro-Ukrainian aims and preferences. And also we plan to use the results of this research after our victory, when we will initiate new programs on engaging people, on restoring the community in the city after the victory. I hope I gave you the answer. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? I don't see anybody raising their hands. Also, you can check the comments in the chat and join the discussion. The discussion about the number of respondents. I can say that this initiative is very important to show that public initiatives that are aimed to ensure the interaction in a community can use different mechanisms of engagement, like creation of common spaces for discussion. And as you said, this can be discussion about different topics without thinking right now directly about the future of the city, because it can be right traumatic while the city is under occupation, but also through the in-depth interview of the IDPs, etc. I would like to say that other communities in Ukraine which are already dealing with the city rebuild strategies, they're using different tools. Maxim and Kirilo mentioned that, for example, Kharkiv city, they held research before creating a master plan in order to determine the vernacular districts, some territorial communities to look for common identities at the basis of the districts, and they are building the plans to renovate, restore not only the buildings, but also the identity of the city, values of the city, the memory of the city. Or, for example, Mykolaiv city community and their representatives, they were using quantitative study of the citizens of Mykolaiv, both those who stayed in the city and who moved out, as to how their life looked like in the city before 2000, before 24th of February. And you can also follow their work and see what they're doing and which instruments and which tools they are using. I see that Olena has her hand raised. Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to ask regarding the methodology, study methodology, because Kirill says it's a scientific research. I didn't find the description in the report. Do you really think that 10 respondents is enough to make a conclusion about the self-identification of Berdiansk people? So I have a very simple question. Who were those people? They were your friends? They were people you know? Where did you find them? Well, we had several criteria. Age, there should be several generations, as we determined different gender, and groups, occupation. Well, this selection, it's not a random selection. Who are those people? Where did you find them? We were using the base of contact we had before, and we were contacting people based on the criteria. For example, we had a database of 600 people, and we need 5 men. Why 10? Why only 10 people? I think it will be the discussion about methodology of qualitative research, when it is relevant, when not, and what results we can use, how we can use the results of this. May I intervene a little bit? Yeah, let me comment briefly. As to the in-depth interview, like most of the researchers know that you always want to have more, but usually based on the depth and number of questions, you can help to 40, 30, or maybe even 10 interviews. And it's important to find a moment when the replies start to be similar, when we hear a lot of similar replies. I see Ruslan Savchinsky is with us, and he managed to get connected, so maybe he would be able to reply. Yeah, great idea. Yes, Ruslan, but I would like to say that it is important to know that public initiative can be based on the available resources and the tasks of the project. And of course, we are talking about the project, about engagement and interaction. So 10 interview could be the first step. So it's not a research as is, but it's a big project that will continue. Ruslan? Yes, hello everyone. I'm sorry I was late. I'm not very much in the context of the previous discussion, but I see we have a methodological question. As Kirillov says, we need to understand that there are different areas of research. Of course, there are scientific research when we have to comply to all the requirements, but it doesn't mean that in some other areas there are limitation of resources. And in this very research, it was rather a discovery within the resources that we had. It was the first emerge into the subject. We do not claim that it's a classical scientific research of Berdyansk citizen identity. It was the collection of information within the new context, and it gives us possibility to move further to develop and plan for further researches and projects. We had an idea to use the stories in some art projects. Speaking of methodology, we had a possibility to talk to 10 people in the situation like where we don't do anything because we cannot be in line with all the research criteria, or we can do something. Of course, there could be 50, 60 interview, but in qualitative methods, it's quite difficult to predict. So I suggest you to look at it as a discovery. And of course, I cannot say that all the methodological requirements were obeyed. We were a preliminary hypothesis on what can influence the difference of the vision of the city of our respondents. And we had a discussion in our little working group, and we think the people were in the different socialization phases. There were people who were witnesses of Soviet period, people who had mixed experience, and people who only had experience of living in the independent Ukraine. So we did a theoretical selection, and we spoke to these 10 people based on the resource available. If you have any other questions, I am happy to answer. Thank you very much, Ruslan. If you have a possibility to continue the communication in the chat, I think I have to make an important remark here. If you are the representatives of the communities, you have an opportunity to exchange contacts with Elena, Ruslan. Maybe we have some others, social researchers. We have Oksana Miroshnichenko. So if you exchange contacts, you can ask for consultations, and you can have interesting common projects and use this as an opportunity for the networking and support for each other. Now I would like us to move from social research, anthropological research, surveys that were used like interviews, etc., as the engagement method, to the research that do not always use interview as a tool, but they are covering volunteers, activists to the collection of information.
And let me invite Marina, representative of a civil society organization Youth Cycle, who will tell us more about the practices of research that provide for engagement of volunteers to collect information, but also to activation of association of cyclists and other researchers in order to make decisions. I would like to ask Marina to share with us what kind of active engagement is important and how it helps in the processes of making decisions. So Marina, over to you. Marina, can you please tell me, shall I show your presentation or will you have the opportunity to share it? Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Marina Bursha. I'm communication manager of the Youth Cycle Association of Cyclists in Kiev, which is known as Youth Cycle. So I had quite a challenging day today. We had problems with the internet, but luckily everything is okay. And I would like to tell you more about our experience of research. When I was getting ready for this event, I understood that our organization really loves research, though we are not a sociological agency, but we do conduct research. We love it, and we do it as best we can, but of course, we do not think that they have high scientific validity. That's what I would like to say. Next slide, please. My name is Marina. So here on the photo, you can see me taking part in one of our research that I will tell you more about in this presentation. This is Porfiroflotsky Bridge in Kyiv. This is how I look when taking part in this event. Youth Cycle, the Association of Cyclists in Kiev. So what we do, we are a civil society organization that has been promoting bicycle as a means of transport since 2007. We help develop cycling infrastructure and increasing the safety of traffic. So our aim is to create conditions for safe use of bicycle in Ukraine. We understand that local administrations and communities create conditions for this. So that is why we only can help the city councils develop infrastructure, collect data, and advocate the development of this infrastructure. So I will tell you more about the collection of data. What kind of research we conduct? There are research that experts conduct themselves, and we only receive the results without engaging the community or cyclists. But there are research where we engage cyclists, where we engage our community. Probably these are people that we do not know about, but then we work with them. The unique research that we've been doing since 2014, this is calculating the number of cyclists. I will tell you more about the pros and cons of this research. Other researches that have been mentioned here on the slide, I will mention about them just briefly. There was another research when creating cycling concepts and as well as analytical and sociological research. Next slide, please. Calculating the number of cyclists in Kiev. It turns out that I took part in this event for many years, in this research for many years, although I work as a communication manager, but this is such a large-scale research And of course, it involves all of us. I don't know a single colleague who wouldn't take part in this research, though we do engage our volunteers from the community to help. This is not about calculating the number of bicycles in Kiev, and this is not the calculation number of users. This is very important to understand, because when people hear this, they think that we just calculate the number of people who use bicycles in Kiev. But no, we are calculating the cycling traffic. We would like to see how the number of cycling traffic, how the cycling traffic is developing in Ukraine. So it's about the dynamics of using bicycles in Kiev. So for example, we calculate everything in percents. For example, the bicycle traffic has increased by 10. So this is about the dynamics, so whether it has increased or decreased. This is not about the exact number of bicycles or people. We also calculate the number of people who use electric scooters or other types of private transport, because they are also part of the infrastructure. They also have demands for infrastructure. That is why they are important to us. And of course, we do that. This is the data that we collect separately. Thanks to this, we also see what are the most popular directions, routes, bicycle routes in Kiev. Last but not least, we also see the development of profile of a typical bicycle user in Kiev. So we get a portrait of a cyclist, and because we also collect data for men and women, so we have this distribution into women and men cyclists. It is important for us to understand whether they use helmets, how they are dressed. We are interested in a portrait of a cyclist. In the streets, when we take a look at a cyclist, it is very important for us to see that these are real people that we work for. This is always very, very important. This is a very good experience for me. Why do we need this data? Not only because we love research, we use this data to advocate of a safe bicycle infrastructure in Kiev. And we urge everyone to conduct a similar research in other cities of Ukraine. On the next slide, or maybe in one slide, you will see that we have special guidelines developed for conducting such research. So how do we do that? You can only see photos here. These are the volunteers that take part in the process. The last research was carried out in summer 2022 during the martial law, and it was not easy this time because we didn't know whether this research will take place. Okay, I will tell you more about how it's happening. So first, we develop methodology. One of the co-founders of the associations, Irina Bondarenko, has brought from Germany, and it has been adapted to Kiev realities. We have increased the number of crossroads, but it was almost the same. There are 22 key crossroads in Kiev. This is where our volunteers go during 2 hours in a working day and also on the weekend, because we want to understand the dynamics of people using bicycles on working days and days off, when they use bicycles for some kind of going out of the city vacation. So here you can see this paper, and our volunteers fill in data by hand. So here you can see what kind of data we have, and I will tell you more about the methodology. After 2 hours, these volunteers go back, and then they fill in Excel spreadsheets. As they transfer these data, they calculate numbers, and then we transfer everything to the spreadsheet. Then this Excel spreadsheet gets into the hands of an expert sociologist who supports us. Her name is Darina Pirogova, and Darina processes this data. So these are volunteers who collect this data, and we can explain the methodology. We have clear guidelines on how to do that. anyone can learn how to do that. However, only an expert can process the data. Darina analyzes and she gives us results. We distribute results through our information resources, website, social media, and through different printed and online media. We collect this data in order to show that bicycle becomes a popular means of transport in Kiev. The dynamics behind this is positive. Even before the pandemic, the number of cyclists increased. So there were years when it decreased, but mostly it is on the growth, especially during the pandemic and during the martial law. Bicycles have become even more popular. So it means that there is a huge demand, and that is why the city must correspond to this demand to build safe infrastructure. Next slide, please. So this is our template. I don't know if you can see it well. So there is a link. Now the formula is available online. You are able to follow it to see for yourself. So for example, if I am on the Povetro-Flotsky bridge, I follow two directions. There are complicated points such as Povetro-Flotsky bridge, because you need to watch for directions at once. That is why there are two volunteers who usually work them. So there was myself and a policeman who is also our volunteer. He was watching two directions, A and B, and I was watching two directions, A and B, one under the bridge and one on the bridge. We calculated the number of cyclists, the number of men and women, number of people who are riding in a particular direction. If there are hire scooters or other types of means of transport, we also calculate the number. And this is what we do on each location. First, it seems that you need to do everything at once. It's pretty overwhelming, but okay, yes, at first it's difficult, but then you understand how to do that and it's no longer a problem. Because also the traffic is not as dense as car traffic. Of course, in Ukraine, there are more cars than bicycles. That is why we have enough time to do that. Now, we also calculate the number of people who use bike sharing and cycling delivery. We also calculate the traffic. Before this template was easier. This methodology changes a little bit every day, including thanks to the feedback from our volunteers. We modify these points and we modify the data that we collect, because I've been doing this for 5 years, and I can say that before this template was easier, and now it's more complicated. And we also add descriptive info about these cyclists. There are so-called athletes that use cycling uniform, and they have expensive bicycles. Of course, we do not calculate the price, but we mostly take a look at whether they just people wear sport clothes or just simple clothes, and we also analyze whether people wear helmets or not. And there are also cases when people are moving on the road, but in the opposite direction of the traffic, of the car traffic. In general, this research gives you the opportunity to understand the disadvantages of the infrastructure. Because, for example, in Troyeshina, it is easy to see where people do not have enough infrastructure and they have to stop their bicycle and then work a little bit. Next slide, please. So this is how our results are looking as an infographic. This is what happened in summer 2022 during a work day, and we also have similar data for a day off. These infographics come together with an analytical data, and we see that, for example, in Kiev, the gender distribution is 13 to 87, 13% of women, 87 of men during the workday use bicycles. As for light types of transport, there are more women, 20 to 80%. Last year, for the first time, we have seen high percentage of cyclists, maybe because for the first time we calculated traffic on infrastructure. Before that, Kiev didn't have as many bicycles, but after the pandemic, the infrastructure in Kiev has improved. That is why we calculate how many people use it. That is why we have distribution. One third of people use bicycle paths, one third use roads, and one third continue using the sidewalk because of the feel more safe there. 80% of people do not use helmets. And let me remind you that helmets are not necessary according to the traffic rules, but 1/4 of the users selected. 2014, 2022, as for the results, where we calculated the traffic, there were several. All the information is available on our website, and you can also see the results. You can get acquainted with this data on our website. We also have video explanation of how to conduct this traffic, and you can also see on our YouTube how to do this similar research in your community, in your hromada, and because it is very valuable for the community. It gives us the opportunity to make proper decisions based on data about development of the cycle infrastructure, and it also gives us the opportunity to better understand where exactly you need these. Because cycle infrastructure is not built overnight. This is an important process that takes place for many hours, and that is why it is necessary to understand where to build bicycle paths. That is why please do that in your community if you haven't done that yet, because I know that there are a lot of people who want to do that. Next slide, please. Okay, so the pros. What this research gives us, in addition to data, it gives us the opportunity to collect detailed data about the users of bicycles. Every year, people ask, why do not you calculate using cameras? Or there are, for example, calculators of cyclists in many European cities. For example, I also saw it in Khmelnytsky in Ukraine. However, cameras or these calculators do not have the statistics that we have thanks to our research. Thanks to this research, thanks to engaging volunteers, we have enough resources to analyze this data. We have the sociologist who helps us as a volunteer to analyze this data, and she also helped to develop the methodology, but she cannot collect this data on 22 crossroads in Kiev. We have a small office with a small team, up to 10 people, and we cannot do that ourselves. We do not have proper budget. Thanks to volunteers, we can do that for free. And then we also have live research when we just watch it how people interact with the city. We can see whether the traffic is safe. We also see how people are happy or unhappy with the use of these.
And this calculation gives us not only the data, but give us the contacts with cyclists, activists. There are a lot of people who join the calculation research, but then they got engaged in the advocacy. So this calculation is the kind of entry point to our community, to our community, because we are sharing the information about this survey in social media and different publics and different media, and so people can read about it and then join us for our U-Cycle community. It is very important. It's a mobilization of our community. This summer in 2022, I started contacting again many people. We were just writing them in the chat. As I said, we have 60 volunteers who are doing the calculation in the crossroads, but there is also need to be a coordinator in place. It's a very important element because volunteers have to be coordinated, they have to be trained. You have to remind them to put the data into the table. So this is the process that needs coordination, and we always have a coordinator. And when we are looking for the volunteers, we are contacting those cyclists who joined our activities before and they were no longer active, but for them it's again an opportunity to come together to discuss. We create a common chat, we exchange photos, and we used to have party always after this survey to thank two people. We didn't do it this summer because of the martial law, but as I said, it's very important for our community to engage new people. Next slide, please. How much time do I have? No time, actually. But if you could summarize your presentation in 2-3 minutes, that would be great. Okay, then this will be the last slide because I was also planning to tell a bit about other research. So I will not touch those subjects now. So the last slide is about the risks. Of course, everything doesn't happen perfectly. First of all, you need a lot of resources and a lot of time to find all the volunteers. We need 60 volunteers who would be working in 2 days. That's why I'm counting, all the offices counting. We always will like people because we need people for all the locations. Otherwise, if there are people missing at certain location, the research cannot happen. And every year I tell myself, no, I will not be counting this year. But finally, I take the form and I go to the location, to a bridge, whatever, and I'm there for 2 hours and I'm calculating. But actually, I'm very happy afterwards because it gives really good emotions. Sometimes a volunteer can say no at the last moment due to their personal circumstances, and then we have to find someone urgently to be present at the location. Because volunteers are engaged, we cannot oblige people. We don't sign any memorandums or contracts. We understand that people can have different circumstances, and we accept that person say yes. But it happens that a person doesn't come in the last moment. The most unpredictable factor is the weather. Last year, because of the rain, we have to postpone the calculation date, which was Wednesday. We had to postpone it 3 times because it was shower. It was not even rain, it was the shower. We're not able to calculate during this time. And martial law, it was the new risk, the new challenge. We didn't know how the territorial defense and blog posts will react because people are taking pictures, taking some notes. We sent them a letter, we explained everyone, but still we were not sure. Fortunately, there were no problem. The only thing that they asked us not to take pictures on the bridges, and we didn't do it. this is it. Thank you very much for your attention. At the last slide, you can see my contacts. I see the presentation was already shared in the chat, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Should you get interested in other researches that we do, I would be happy to tell you about that as well. Thank you very much, Marina. So you can write your question in the chat and raise your hand. There is a question in the chat. Could you list all the researches that you held? Okay, for example, we can help to develop the value concept based on the inquiry of the community or some authorities or any other community or organization or any other community that has the budget. So we are researching the most popular cycling routes in the community, and then we do the field research together with the local architects and other people who work with the town planning documents. People go to the field, people show them places where there are a lot of cyclists, and then we check it was the map that was created in the first day. And this is how we engage local citizens and activists. Mostly those are activists who have to dedicate their time, and those are mostly cyclists activists because they're interested in developing the good infrastructure. And speaking of our community, also the members of our community are engaged in some of our researches. For example, last time we were doing the overview of the best practices of cycling strategies in different countries. I did the analysis myself as well. I was analyzing the cycling strategy in Austria. It wasn't very difficult. It was a document in English, and there were some questions. I was later on, the person who was doing the analysis of the data and who was writing the summary, it was a person who is more professional in this topic. I, as an activist, just read the strategy, and I noted in Ukrainian what measures do they take to provide safety of the cyclists, what happens in the education, in tourism, etc. So it was like a collection of information. There were 10 activist cyclists from different cities of Ukraine, Zhytomyr, Kyiv, Mirgorod, Poltava. Also, it was a social study with focus groups made by Darina Berehova about how the traffic rules are being taught in schools for it wasn't a question, I guess. Okay, so how the traffic rules for the cyclists are taught in schools. So there were groups like cyclist activists, teachers, and policemen and women. So those were people who educate children in school. Thank you very much, educate on the topic of traffic rules. Thank you very much, Marina. It's very important to underline why we invited you, Cycle, to talk about this type of research, because what UCycle is doing by engaging the activists and local citizens, it's a very good example of participative research when the participants are also engaged in analysis. On the other hand, even the publication of the results for the community, those infographics, is also a possibility to advocate the decisions in future and strengthen the position and engagement. I also see Alexei from Severodonetsk in the chat, and he says that he's now developing the digital map of destruction in Severodonetsk. And we also discussed that we need to talk about the experience of what is going on today. The researchers who are making the maps of destructions in their communities, and they work with some memory locations, but I think we will have a separate event dedicated to the heritage and memory. It will be next time. And next time we will see what research approaches connected to the memory could be used. And we will also discuss how to work with memory, with heritage, and how to engage citizens and other actors to the work with cultural and historical heritage. But I'm very grateful to you, Alexei, that you are with us today, and that for the work you are doing. If you can share the link to your project in the chat, I'm sure it will be interesting for our participants. Thank you very much, Marina. Are there any questions to Marina? I have a question about digitalization. You said you're using mapping tool to understand what cycling routes the cycling community uses. Do you use any digital tools like tracking, routes tracking, or you are working, you are just making an interviews and then you are putting information on the map? I was present only one time during this activity. It's a very interactive event. And this is the case when not only the participants of our community engaged, but all the people who ride the bicycles in certain area, in certain community. So there is an interviewing, and together with the expert who is doing the mapping work, it's in the real time. There is no tracking. Maybe people can use their Strava application to tell which routes they mostly use, but it's in real time. So we take the map of the village or town, and we put a transparent paper at top of it, and we just use different markers to determine the primary routes, the secondary route, and recreational routes. So recreational routes are the routes used only for leisure, not for transportation. And I may be able to find a picture to show you. So saying briefly, there are no digital instruments. We collect the information from people who come to these workshops, and they give information to us. It was the same in Kiev when the Kiev Velo concept. When we come to the new town or village, we don't have community there. We don't have people who we know there. So we go to this town council and we ask them for the contacts of the people who ride bicycles. And then on the second day, experts go and do this so-called field research. Thank you very much. I just wanted to underline that this mapping that is being done together with people who are actually using this infrastructure, who are riding the bicycle in this environment, and you're doing this mapping of velo routes, important memory locations, historical locations. It's a very important engagement instrument, which is also a research instrument, but I actively encourage you to use it because it's engaging, it builds community, and it gives you also possibility to start a conversation about the life in the city, about the challenges, about the future. Also, I would like to draw your attention that these maps can be created digitally. You can ask people to track their movements or to to mark different spots online and ask the questions and give their comments. There was a project from change agents, the map of first dates in Kiev. It was a very emotional map, and people were asked to mark any Kiev locations that are associated with nice romantic memories, but you can use these tools with any other topic. And you can ask people to mark locations online and leave a little comment saying what kind of story is connected with this location. So this narrative about history and location is a very important part of participative research and of engagement, because later on it can be transformed into decision making. If we're talking about the policy development for the communities and development of the communities in the future, are there any questions to Marina? I see there are no questions. Thank you very much, Marina. I would like to suggest use the following. Maybe someone has wants to comment, or maybe you have any needs about research. So whatever you would like to comment on, you can write it in the chat or speak up, Oksana. Hello, everyone. My name is Oksana Miroshnichenko. I am doing the research of mobility in different cities of Ukraine from 2016, even from 2013 theoretically, but those were the first efforts. I would like to give several technical comments which are important. If we are talking about the measurements Marina was talking about, and those, they can be not only cyclists, anything. When you work with a lot of people, you need to have a coordinator who would be able to replace any person at any given point. We do this to check the number of passengers in the public transport, for example. We also did very similar. We had people who were at the certain location, and they were doing the measurements. And you need a person who would be, so you need a coordinator who is doing only coordination, and then a person who would be able to replace any participant. So I think Marina will agree then. We had the discussion about focus groups, about the depth of the interview, and whether 10 people is enough. Based on my experience, when we would come to the cities and towns, we would do focus groups with people who are more difficult to reach through other ways. For example, in Mykolaiv, there were several cyclists and they were working with the map. But for example, if we need people with here visual impairments, you need to go to the organizations and you have to ask their opinion, and you have to make in-depth interviews with them, because it's unlikely that you will cover them through the conventional methods. Also, the people with physical disabilities with mobility disabilities. They will tell you a lot about the problems in the city, and it will be good in-depth research. If we're talking about 10 people and our target is to understand, not to understand how much, but how, and to make some primary discovery. In-depth interview can work very well here. If our target is how many, then you have to find resources for quantitative research. But now in the conditions of martial law, it's difficult. And I have a question to the first speaker. How do you feel the martial law? How does it affect the work? Because I felt myself that it's very difficult now to talk to people. You know, some people are afraid they will be inscripted to the army when they come to participate in the poll, etc. Maxim, would you like to reply? How it all happens today in the times of war, martial law? We are not doing now the door-to-door poll. We did face-to-face and dedicated location. We were talking to IDPs and because there are some shelters and some houses where IDPs live compactly, it's a little bit easier even, but we can say, of course, that martial law has positive influence on our work. Thank you very much for today's presentations. Thank you for joining our meeting. All the contacts of our speakers are available. I hope you are also shared contacts in the chat. I hope that research will become your own resource and instrument of participation and engagement. And if you need a consultation, you may contact any of our speakers or SADOS Analytical Center. Thank you very much for finding time to take part in our event, and see you in 2 weeks. It will be an event dedicated to the memory and to the question of preservation and restoration of historical heritage, and to the engagement of the citizens, community members, and different actors to this process in order to form the vision of the future community development. Thank you very much. Please follow SADOS events.